everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Soong Files videos. Everything you never wanted to know about the Star Trek. Today we're going to be talking about the NX-02. Everybody knows all about the NX-01 and what happened to the NX-01 and Jonathan Archer and his brave, intrepid crew. But today we're going to be talking about Erika Hernandez and her kind of brave and kind of intrepid crew, and what happened to the NX-02 after we see their final appearance inside of the show Star Trek Enterprise. So, the NX-02 was actually commissioned in the year 2154, just a few years after the NX-01. Now, the NX-02 was originally commissioned and kind of rushed through development because of the Xindi crisis that was going on at the time that the Enterprise NX-01 was actually dealing with, and Earth was basically racing to try to get this ship completed so that they had another formidable Warp 5 capable ship ready to go in case the Xindi actually appeared. Of course, they weren't exactly ready for that particular time period, but eventually they were launched, and they actually did have some missions that were actually seen in the show Star Trek Enterprise, where they actually assisted the Enterprise and so that it didn't get destroyed, and a really cool shot where they were actually up one was above it and one was below it, and they were kind of inverted. So that was a really cool little episode. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely check it out. So they saved the Enterprise a couple of times, participated in a couple of the coalition missions that were going on during that time, right after they signed the initial charter with the Andorians, Tellarites, Vulcans, and humans. So they were kind of still into service after the NX-01 kind of went off and did its own thing. The NX-02 was kind of the forefront of brand new Earth technology and Earth ships, so that was the main focus of the NX-02, which was pushing the boundaries of the coalition. So when the Earth-Romulan War, the first Earth-Romulan War, broke out at around sometime in the year 2155, 2156, the NX-02 being the best ship that the Earth Coalition had to offer, they actually were out and about at all times, basically on the front lines, fighting off the Romulans almost on a daily basis. And they actually beefed up the amount of Makos that were on board the NX-02, and they actually added some additional Coalition armaments and capabilities to the ship to try to beef its abilities up and make sure that it could actually survive against these much more formidable Romulan warships. So they continued to fight and continued to protect, Coalition colonies and things of that nature. And then towards the middle of 2156, the Columbia was actually attacked by a large group of Romulan ships, which then actually used a technological ability that Romulans don't use very often, where they actually took control of the onboard computer of the NX-02 and used the NX-02 itself to destroy a civilian convoy that it was actually protecting. In order to break that control, what the O2 people did, their crew, along with Erika Hernandez, what they decided to do was to detonate a photonic torpedo just above the hull to make it seem like they had self-destructed the NX-02. And as soon as they detonated it, they actually did a very short warp jump to make it seem like the actual ship itself was no longer there. And that doesn't really make any sense because obviously the Romulans would scan for the debris field, but this is what was written. So they did that. They broke the control there, and then they continued on. Excuse me. Once they got through the other side, that small warp jump, a lot of the crew was accidentally killed. Obviously, when you detonate that kind of a photonic torpedo that close to your ship, you're going to have casualties. So a lot of the crew was actually killed, and the entire warp drive and communications arrays, along with several other subsystems, were actually destroyed beyond repair. So they only had sublight impulse engines. That's all they had left. So what they did was they kind of used a bit of a relative time dilation, science terms, but they basically traveled for what to them felt like only 63 days, but was actually almost close to 10 years. So when they finished their journey, they actually were coming out of their weird time dilation that they used with their impulse engines in the year 2168. Now remember, they got attacked in 2156, so that's about 10 years or more after their initial assault against the Romulans. At this point, obviously, the Federation has already kind of written off the NX-02 as lost in casualty of war. But they came out of their journey, and their intent was to basically link up with the species that their long-range sensors had detected was near warp capable at the time. So they figured, hey, in 10 years, they'll probably have warp drive. We can get them into the Coalition, and then we can use their communications and warp drive speed to get back to Earth. That seemed like a good plan. Unfortunately, when they got there, they did not realize that this particular planet, planet called the Irigol, had a species called the Kaliar, and the Kaliar actually were very secretive and very private, and they wanted basically nothing to do with the Coalition or really the NX-02, but because they had discovered them, they basically told the NX-02, like, listen, you know, and Erica Hernandez, they said, listen, you're screwed. You're not getting out of here. We will not allow you to leave. You can stay here, but you can't leave. So you're not going to go back to Earth. Captain Hernandez actually agreed to their terms and went ahead and said, okay, yeah, we'll just stay here. We're just going to live out our lives here because we can't make it back to Earth. We're going to respect their customs. Now, not everybody agreed with that, especially the Makos that were still alive on the NX-02. So what happened next was that the Makos kind of got the rest of the crew together from the Columbia and actually staged a bit of a coup against the captain, and they actually then used the NX-02 to destroy several cities on the planet of Irigol, killing a lot of the Kaliar, and destroyed their warp facilities and their long-range communications devices. During all these explosions, it actually wound up causing the sun inside of the Irigol system to actually go supernova, and then the actual planet itself was destroyed. So in order to try to get out of that whole situation, they basically tried to access a subspace corridor that then led them over to the distant Gamma Quadrant. And I'll go ahead and read this. Its remaining 31 human and 1 Denobulan crew members were incinerated by the hyperphasic radiation present in subspace tunnel 40 seconds after they entered it. So they entered the subspace tunnel to try to escape the planet, the system's sun going supernova, only to be then disintegrated by, unfortunately, by radiation. Now, there was a couple of crew members inside of the Kaliar city ships, which is what I'll call the Mantillus and the Axion. When they entered the subspace tunnel, they were actually deposited into the Delta Quadrant around 4,527 BC. And in the Beta Quadrant of 1519 BC, respectively. So there was a couple of crew members that kind of basically lived out their lives on these city ships, and that was the kind of end of their lineage. But the majority of the Columbia crew died and perished on board the Columbia as it entered the subspace rift. Now, what the hell happened to the actual Columbia? What you see here in this image that I've had up during this video, it looks like it's been crashed on a planet for quite some time. Well, that's because, well, it fucking did. So, in the year 2373, the mystery took a new twist in the search for the Columbia, because a lot of researchers and historians were actually out looking for the wreckage of the ship to find out exactly what actually happened to it. And actually, Benjamin Sisko and the USS Defiant actually found the ship on a planet inside of the Gamma Quadrant. Now, they initially did a site survey on the ship. They discovered that it was the NX-02 Columbia, but they were quickly attacked by Jem'Hadar raiders because this was a hotbed right before the Dominion War, and then the Dominion War broke out just a few short weeks later. So no one actually had the opportunity to actually go in there and look at the NX-02 and find out what the hell's going on there. So, in the year 2381, Ezria Dax and the USS Aventine actually then went back to the planet where they found the NX-02 because they were trying to find out if the NX-02 had entered into a portal, basically a conduit in space that the Borg were using to get from the Gamma Quadrant to the Beta Quadrant and back and forth, that they were using as their incursion into the Beta Quadrant. So, of course, that's what had happened. So they actually wound up basically controlling the corridor. The Federation wound up controlling the corridor and then sending the research teams out to actually retrieve the NX-02 Columbia and also stop the Borg from using the conduit itself. So, at the end of the day, in the year 2410, the ship itself had actually been completely restored, towed away from the Gamma Quadrant back through the corridor to the Utopia Phoenicia shipyards, and it had been completely restored into the NX-02 refit, which was actually a completely upgraded version of the Columbia. They actually put it back into service just in time for the Iconian War that was taking place around 2410, and they actually outfitted it with all the technology from the 25th century. So it actually got a huge boost in technology, shielding, weapons, power, distribution, life support, and of course its capabilities with speed. So, and actually the NX-02 is actually a playable ship the upgraded version of the NX-02 is actually a playable ship in the game Star Trek Online, and it's got a whole new hull section at the bottom. They've upgraded the engines, and they've upgraded the power distribution levels and everything like that, and it's actually a pretty powerful ship. Anyways, that concludes today's video for the Soong files of the NX-02 Columbia. I hope that you guys enjoyed this little story about what happened to the Columbia after we saw its final appearance inside of the Star Trek Enterprise show. I found it quite interesting. I actually had no idea what happened to the NX-02 Columbia until I started actually researching for this video, so it was actually really fun for me to learn about it, and I hope that you guys and gals also enjoyed it. Please throw a comment up below. Tell me what you guys think about the fate of the NX-02 Columbia. Do you think that Captain Hernandez was right to basically subject her crew to the rules and regulations of this planet they had just recently discovered, or do you think that they should have continued on their journey to try and get back home no matter what, kind of a la Voyager style? So I'm curious to hear what you guys and gals think about this video. Please throw a like and a subscribe up on the YouTube, and follow me on Twitter at Ketwolski, and follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/RealKetwolski. And I will see you guys next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies.